You're listening to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast, your source of music news, stories, and 2-hour deep dive interviews with bands that have sold over 150 million albums. If you've been enjoying the podcast, please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Now let's dive in to today's episode. Welcome to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We are joined by a very special guest. He's achieved a level of mastery as the singer and guitarist for the multi-platinum selling, #1 charting, and 11-time Juno-nominated band, April Wine. The band has sold over 20 million albums and has charted 21 top 40 singles. So welcome to the podcast, Marc Perrin. Marc, how are you? And is it true that you are a massive Montreal Canadiens fan, and do you think we can get along over the next 2 hours with me as an Ottawa Senators fan?
No, I've got to cut it short right away, Joel. I'm sorry, but that's
all she wrote. We're all done here.
I'm an Ottawa boy, so I mean, I love the Senators too. But I grew up in the 70s. Lafleur, Mahovlich, Cournoyer, Dryden. I mean, that was it. That was the dynasty for me. But what year did the Senators arrive?
I think it was early 90s, like 92 or 93.
Early 90s. Remember that first game they had against the Habs? They beat them.
That's about the only game we won that season. I think we set an all-time record. I think out of 82 games, we won like 22 games. I think it's the worst season ever.
I didn't care. I was so happy for them. Like, even being a Habs fan, I was like, wow, Ottawa, the place went nuts. They were still playing at the Civic Center, I think, in those days.
Yeah, just a few thousand people, 8,000 people.
It was like they won the
20.
Stanley Cup. Yeah, they won the Stanley Cup that night. It was really cool. It was a great way to start, that franchise. But to answer your question, I am a Habs fan. I will root for the Senators if the Habs get eliminated. Doesn't look like that this year though. But anyways,
they're looking good.
They're looking good. They started strong and then they've gone down a bit now. But young team, rebuilt team, exciting to watch, exciting players to watch. And we both don't like the Leafs, so that's it.
We're going to bond over our mutual disdain for Toronto. We'll forget about Ottawa and Montreal for a bit.
Okay, sounds good.
You get a pass being a Montreal fan, being from the Ottawa area, because there just wasn't an Ottawa team while you were growing up and getting into hockey. So it's all good. We can get past that. No problem.
Okay, cool.
I like to start these interviews by sharing with the listeners how the guests and I know each other. So in our case, a few weeks ago, our mutual friend Dan Preston posted a picture of you guys on tour in Germany, and it was 1 a.m. and you're sitting around a conference table watching the Toronto Blue Jays in the World Series, like a good Canadian boy watching the sport.
We watched every game.
Yeah, I'm not even a baseball fan, and I was watching.
I wasn't a baseball fan either until this year. I mean, the drama. I mean, I was completely hooked. I was asking questions all the time because I was around baseball aficionados. I mean, serious Blue Jays fans, guys that have been, watching baseball since they're 4 years old. So I'm learning all kinds of stuff here about the sport, and I just learned to really love it. And of course, being a Canadian, we love our sports teams, and that's it. It's the World Series.
That's our only team, right? So that's Canada's team.
Oh yeah, and they didn't get swept in 4 games, man. It went down to the wire. I mean, you could not, they lost, but in such a dignified way, down to the last second. So it was worth staying up till 3 a.m. or not. The game would start at 3 a.m. for us. Yeah, it was cool. It was awesome. Bunch of guys in a stinky tour bus listening to the Blue Jays, and cheering in the middle of Germany somewhere. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. So when I saw the post from Dan, then I thought, wait a minute, I love April Wine. I would love to sit down with members of the band and really honor their career. So I reached out, and here we are. And I wanted to kick this interview off powerfully. So I reached out to get a little bit of help. And I have some kind words sent in from Dan Preston himself. So I know him as the guitarist from Clark Nova, and he's gone on to have an incredible live sound career. And this is what Dan says. He says, At the beginning of 2025, I was asked to return to April Wine as front of house audio tech. I was hired by Miles Goodwin back in 2014, originally to tour manage and do front of house. That opportunity opened a lot of doors for me. Returning to the April Wine camp from a 6-year hiatus has been quite a trip. With the addition of Marc Perrin taking over for Miles, I'm feeling this band being invigorated like I never thought it could. Although there's been a lot of member changes over the years, it was definitely hard to imagine an April Wine without Miles, but Marc is an absolute pro, a great performer, and his vocals are doing more than simple justice to these classic songs. I honestly feel that to become and to stay successful in this industry, whether it's as a writer, performer, technician, or producer, you need to keep that dream and that inner child alive and keep that fire burning. Marc possesses this quality, and it's a large part of why April Wine is able to continue. Fan response has been awesome, and that's been largely because of what Marc is bringing to the table. The year has been a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to some special tours and shows over the next couple of years. So that's from Dan Preston.
Wow. Wow. Thanks, Dan. I owe you a beer. That's very kind. Dan and I hit it off, the first time we met. We're like, we like the same kind of foods. We like the same kind of sports. We like motorcycles. We like audio gear. We're like brothers from a different mother. So it was really cool to be on the road with him. And he's a total pro, super passionate, super professional. And it's funny to watch him get upset over rooms. Like every sound check he walks in before the show and I'm looking at him and go, oh, he's not a good room for him, too boomy, too bright, too big, too woody, too metally, too glassy or whatever. So and then or sometimes he'll walk in with a big smile and he goes, yeah, it's gonna be a fucking killer night, guys. It's gonna be a killer night, with his beard down to here. So he's a total pro and a total joy to be on the road with. Yeah, we really hit it off.
I went to a concert once that was in a venue that was completely glass. Every surface was windows and glass. And I just thought, I have an audio engineering background. I just thought this is like the worst possible acoustic style that could happen.
There's one worse. Mirrors. I played a strip club in Montreal. And I swear to God, the stage, the dancing pole was like in the middle of the stage. The whole place was surrounded by mirrors. It's like glass, only brighter. It was just god awful. Yeah.
Did you show off any moves with the pole available there on stage?
I've got another pole story actually. It's in '89, I went to Africa with Freddie James and the Fusion 3, which were like a dance band. They're still playing. Freddie's an amazing performer. And, we went to Africa and we played in Senegal and I got really sick. And the club we played at was a club called the Kilimanjaro. And if it rained, you didn't play it because it rained inside the club. And there was a post in the middle of the stage and I had a super high fever. I was suffering from sunstroke, but they thought it was malaria. And they basically propped me up against this post. So I played the whole gig like leaning on the post and just like playing.
It'd be funny if they had straps like under your shirt, just straps
they
you
could
to
have
the post.
They could have bungeed me there, It was pretty hence my dancing pole stories.
We're going to do a full 2-hour deep dive here. We're going to cover your life, your career, your discography. There's so much to get to over your career. We're going to take it back to the beginning. Where does this love of music come from? Is there an earliest musical memory that stands out to you?
My mom and dad, my dad especially, listening to his classical music or singing out of key in church. I remember that. I remember having a small organ that my parents bought for my sister, and she was taking lessons, and I was always on it, and I ended up teaching myself Silent Night and a couple of Christmas songs. Just by ear on that little organ. Seeing my dad enjoy music and my mom dancing and enjoying music, music equaled fun, And my sister is 7 years older than I. So she was into listening and buying records before I was. So I would often, when she wasn't around, I'd go downstairs and listen to her record collection. Cream, Stevie Wonder, SOS Band, Jimi Hendrix.
She had some good taste. Let's give a shout out
Oh,
to
no, no,
her.
no. Barry White, I mean, all kinds of, and K-Tel hits, the K-Tel records with all the different kind of hits on it. And I literally remember listening to Frankenstein by Edgar Winter with my ear in the speaker. Like I was so mesmerized by those sounds, not knowing, how they were made, not knowing what an electric guitar sounded like or a B3 sounded like. And saying like it's like
That's a good introduction, right, to guitar, because it's all these guitar riffs spliced together, which is why it's called Frankenstein to start with.
yeah, and well, or Smoke on the Water. I remember playing hockey in Glenwood. We had a rink outside, and we had a little shack. We called it the shack, and that's where you'd put on your skates. And I remember taking my skates off, jumping over the rink into a snowbank, and there's always music coming out of the shack, right? And I hear and I'm like, my feet are in the snowbank, and I'm not moving anymore because I'm mesmerized by this sound. What is this? Like the first time you heard Van Halen.
Perhaps the heaviest guitar riff of all time.
Yeah, and organ doubled on top of it too. It's just crazy. Yeah. So I was already mesmerized by sound. Um, Friends of mine that I've had my whole life told me that I was a real pain in the ass in the school bus going to school because I was always tapping out rhythms on the front seat. So the person in front of me I was always tapping out rhythms, whether it be in my buddy's basement on the bar stools or on the bar. I was always kind of like, I always had rhythm in my head. And yeah, and I think just the love of music from my family um, made me realize that, music equaled fun and smiles.
I'm
So,
surprised you didn't become a drummer with all that tapping when you were young.
oh, I love drumming. I love it. I had a drum for a long time. I love playing drums. My 10-year-old plays drums like crazy. She's in like 3 bands. And yeah, um, I play drums on guitar. Guitar is a wonderful instrument for that. It's a percussive instrument, it's a polyphonic instrument, and it's a monophonic instrument. So you can play chords, you can play melodies, and you can really chug on the guitar and it becomes rhythmical. The first thing I ever played on a guitar was I picked up a guitar. I had no idea what I was doing. I just barred like a bunch of strings, right? And I went, Chicago, right? That's the first thing I ever played. And it was easy. The rhythm was easy for me to do. And yeah, so love it. Love bass.
So
Love rock.
technically, was the organ your first instrument before the guitar?
I guess. I mean, that little organ in the living room, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was yellow and brown. I think it only had one octave and like a bunch of buttons on it, and I would always just be noodling on that. And yeah, first time I touched a guitar was during the 76 Olympics. We were watching the Olympics in St. Bruno at my cousin's place. And my uncle Guy played classical guitar. And my cousin Natalie and I were watching the Olympics, and his classical guitar was in the corner of the room. And I just walked up to it, picked it up, and was looking at it. And as I'm doing this, ma tante Denise, she walks, in the hallway and stops in the doorway, looks at me with the guitar in my hands, and she goes, "That's a really fun instrument. You can take it anywhere. You can play it anywhere. And people always like you when you play guitar." So she planted a seed. I was 12 and I didn't start really playing guitar till 14. But ma tante Denise, who was an artist, who I have her paintings here, she planted that seed.
So once we scheduled this interview, I put out the bat signal to the April Wine fans to get fan questions submitted, and I got just a trove of questions. So I'm going to sprinkle them out throughout the interview, and I'm going to put this question right here because Jeanette and Luc Provencher ask, "Does Marc speak French?" So when you just said "ma tante," whatever, I'm like,
Matin
okay, there's
Denise.
some French in there for sure. Yeah.
Well, Marc Parent, I'm a Quebecer. I'm French Canadian. I was bilingual at 4 because I had two friends at a very, very young age. I had Serge Drolet. So with Serge, spoke French, and I went to French school. And my other friend was Sydney Soroka. So Sydney Soroka, it was English. So I'd speak French with Serge and I'd speak English with Sydney. So I was bilingual. I never saw it happen, to be honest.
We've talked about playing the organ, picking up a guitar. There's a lot of drumming in there. When did the singing and songwriting come into play?
Um, I think when I was in 8 seconds, I wanted to sing more and I wanted to write more. I joined that band as a guitar player. I had no experience really being in a band. I had no experience writing songs. Um, and I learned with those guys. Those guys, that was their band. I was like the outsider coming in, and they were used to working together. They were used to writing songs. They were already had, a bunch of songs written, and so I learned so much, with those guys, and I wanted to sing and be more participative. Yeah, I wanted to write more, and I wrote a couple of melody lines and hooks and choruses and stuff like that on the Alma Cantar album, and that's where it all started. For me, I mean, I was literally giving guitar lessons at Harmonie Musique in the Galerie d'Elmer, and this gentleman called Manfred Leidecker, bless his soul, he was in a band called Avalon, and Avalon played my high school. And so did Pete Fredette, who plays bass with Kim Mitchell. I saw Pete Fredette when I was 14 in a band called Butler, and he would sing and play bass, and he was killer. And I was just like, I want to do that. And so I'm teaching at the Harmonie Musique, and Manfred had just moved to Elmer, and he built a studio in his house. So he walks into the music store and he gives me his business card. He gave me a bunch of business cards. And he said, listen, if you know of any musicians wanting to do demos, wanting to do any kind of recording whatsoever, he says, give him my card. He says, I'm an engineer, I'm a musician, I've got a studio. And I just said, hey, man, I'm a guitar player and I'd like to record. I've never been in a studio. And he said, well, okay. He says, come over to my place and I'll get you to play guitar on a couple of my songs. So I did that. I went to his place and I set up my Mesa Boogie amp and my pedals and all that, and I played guitar on his songs. And 8 seconds were doing a demo at that studio. And after I played my guitar tracks, Manfred knew that they were looking for another guitar player. And he said, listen, this kid just came in, and he played guitar. This is what he does. You should check him out. And it was funny because my neighbor, Hélène Soublière, was going out with the bass player in 8 seconds. So try to stay with me here. So Hélène, at one point, she's listening to me practice in my room because, the bungalows in Elmer are like one beside the other, and it's summertime, the windows are open. So she's hearing me play guitar. And one time she says, you should come listen to my boyfriend's band. They're playing at the Talisman. So I go with Hélène, we go listen to 8 seconds play. And this is before I do the demo at Manfred's place. And I listen to them play and I go, wow, that's a cool band. I'd like to play in that band, And another weird story, Scott Milks, who's also from Elmer, he walked into Valleycat Sports where I was working in Les Galeries d'Elmer, and I sold him a pair of sneakers, and he had a little button, on his jean jacket that said 0.08. And I go, what's that? And he goes, well, it's 8 seconds. It's my band. So these two Hélène invites me to go listen to 8 Seconds because her boyfriend's a bass player. Scott walks into Valley Cut Sports. I sell him a pair of Adidas sneakers, and he's from 8 Seconds. And
And the
then
guy with the
Manfred Leidecker,
studio.
and the guy at the studio invites me to go play guitar on his tunes, and 8 Seconds are in there doing a demo. And then next thing I know, I'm auditioning for 8 Seconds as a guitar player. I was 20, 21 years old or whatever. And yeah, and that's how it all started. So I went from Hélène listening to me, play my guitar in my bedroom at my parents' place to opening up for Luba at the Ottawa Congress Center, 3,000 people. And I'm like flying by the seat of my pants because I have no idea what I'm doing.
It feels like the universe conspired to get you in that band.
Yeah. I worked hard though. They sent me a bunch of tapes. They had live recordings of them at Barrymore's in Ottawa. And I just went through those tapes and I, lifted the guitar parts that were there. I made up parts of my own and I just worked really hard so that we would rehearse in Andy's mother's place downstairs. And yeah, that was my first experience really in a real band. And I started like, I didn't do any clubs. I didn't do any of that stuff till after 8 Seconds. So I started at the top, in terms of Ottawa local band doing good. And then next thing you know, we're signed to Polygram Records, biggest Canadian record deal ever signed, 7 albums in 7 years and $250,000 budget. And we're going to England and we're going to be recording with Rupert Hine, who's just done Private Dancer. And he's just done The Fix and Saga, and just unbelievable ride, unbelievable for, between 85 and 87, man. It was like, wow, my feet didn't touch the ground.
I heard that one of the big breaks for 8 Seconds was winning a contest with Shea 106 that allowed the band to make a music video. Is that correct?
Yeah, Shea. They won that with a song called Where's Beulah. And the gentleman who did their video had a company called Core Videocom, and his name was Alan White. And he did the video for them and took them on as a manager. He became their manager as well. Yeah. And the highlight for that band in terms of, I think, and the Ottawa connection was opening up for Paul Young at the Ottawa Civic Center. The place was packed and we got an encore. And Paul Young's band, which are all British and American session players, they're all like kind of side stage waiting to go on, and people are still screaming for us. And we go, what do we do? And Paul Young just said, go do your encore. You have an encore. He was, he's British, so he's very gentlemanly, very, very classy. So we got an encore for that show, and that was very cool.
That doesn't happen very often for an opening band.
No, not very often. No.
Didn't you guys get to perform with David Bowie at one point?
We did. We on Bowie's Glass Spider Tour, 1987. Bowie was really cool because he had Duran Duran as his opener. Oh. And he would use local bands to open for Duran Duran. So, in Montreal, Michel Pagliaro opened the show. And then in Ottawa, 8 Seconds opened the show. And I got to touch Peter Frampton's guitar, because Peter Frampton was in his band. And I was so impressed. We're side stage. We're not allowed to we're not allowed to get too close. And there's like, I don't know, 60,000 people, whatever, maybe more. Lights go down and this limousine, enters the parking lot behind the stage. And Bowie walks out. He's handed a microphone. He goes up 3 steps, boom, the show starts, does his whole show, finishes, walks down the steps, gets in the limousine. People are still applauding the last song. Okay, nobody's moving. And he's already left the building. He's already gone, and people are still applauding. He was probably on his private jet and people were still filing out of Lansdowne Park, that was pretty impressive to see, a machine so tightly wound and so professional, you know.
I remember hearing that the Rolling Stones have private jets where after each concert, they're back home to sleep in their own beds after every show. Like that's how much money they have. And that allows them to keep touring like they've been touring because they don't have to stay in hotels, which is wild.
Yeah, George Michael did that too. A lot of, A-list stars would do that because it's hard being on the road, I mean, not sleep. It's as stupid as a pillow. It's as silly as not having your pillow. As you get older, your sleep pattern becomes very fragile, and you need your comfort zone. And with time, over time, if you're always sleeping on different pillows and different mattresses, and if you're in a tour bus that's always moving and bouncing around, you don't get to sleep very well. So what happens on a 3-week tour, and trust me, I'm speaking from experience here, on a 3-week tour, if you're losing sleep, if you can't sleep properly, Richard Lancier, our bass player, he had a Fitbit on his wrist. He's like, I'm averaging like 2 hours of sleep a night, like a good of deep sleep. The rest of the time you're in a semi state where if the bus hits a bump or turns a corner too sharply, you wake up and you think we're crashing, or you think, you're always kind of not settled. So yeah, Clapton would tour with his own pillows, and and I understand, at the older you get, the more your sleep is precious.
So in 1986, you guys had a number one hit with Kiss You When It's Dangerous, and this was on the charts for 28 weeks. What did that kind of support at radio mean to you guys as a young band?
Oh, it's crazy. It was amazing. I mean, for them, they had worked harder than I had, right? I was like coming into a well-oiled machine, and they had been, paying their dues in the clubs around Quebec and Ontario and throughout Canada already. Um, for me, I got the best end of that deal, because I'm the guitar player coming out of his house, and all of a sudden he's a rock star, So yeah, I remember being with my buddy Luc Lavigne, and we're in his Camaro, and okay, and listening to Shay, of course, and okay, and the number one song in Ottawa today is, and it did it, and the intro to Kiss You, and we're like, what? It was pretty cool. It was really cool.
Do you remember the first time you heard your music on the radio? Was it that song or something before that?
I think it was probably Where's Beulah, because Where's Beulah was on the '85 album that I did with them. And again, I mean, I'm like never been in a recording studio besides Manfred's place where I played on his demos. Next thing I know, I'm in Altair 4, a recording studio, I think it was called. And we're doing Ottava Rima, which is the first album from 8 Seconds that has Where's Beulah on it, the song that won them the Share Shay contest and got them the video and all that. So I probably heard Where's Beulah before Kiss You, but Kiss You was, the recording in England, working with Rupert Hine and working with Stephen W. Taylor, who's like a world-renowned engineer who did like Mahavishnu Orchestra and all these great, records. Hearing that, song was pretty amazing, because I really liked my guitar sounds. It was hard being a guitar player in the 80s, because it was a keyboard era. It was DX7s, and it was like guitars, certain bands were very guitar still, but the average mainstream pop band, rock band, it was more keyboards
Is
oriented.
that the Van Halen effect, or is that a different time?
Well,
Because of the
87.
song Jump? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I just think in general, the 80s skinny ties, that keyboard oriented music in general just took that shift, new wave. There was punk that was out there that was very guitar, very raw. But if you're talking mainstream, pop, which 8 Seconds was, we wanted to sound like The Fix, which was heavy guitar still. But my point was it was hard for me to get my guitar in the mix before England. Rupert, lucky for me, was a guitar fan and Stephen W. Taylor. And as soon as I walked in, I go, how do I get the Jimmy West Oram sound? How do I get that guitar, that compressed, gang, 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 gang. How do I get that sound, And they showed me and we got close to it and I was thrilled. I remember at one point I was doing guitars on the tracks and Scott, the drummer, who's also an Elmer guy, he walks in and his face just lights up because they hadn't heard any guitar on the tracks yet. You do guide tracks to get the drums down. You play together to make sure there's a good performance of drums and bass, and we call those basic tracks, right? And then you come back in and you overdub guitars, keyboards, vocals, backing vocals. So the guys have been doing all the basic tracks for like a week and a half, and they hadn't heard any guitar really on the tracks yet, right? And when the few days we took to do my guitars, I remember at one point Scott walking in and hearing like the guitar parts, and the sounds that we were getting, and his face just lit up. And I remember getting a kick out of that, saying, all right, Scott's digging it, So that was really cool. That was a wonderful experience too, to work with those guys.
So on the strength of that hit song, on the strength of the hit album, you guys get your first Juno nomination in 87. This was for Most Promising Group. What did that Juno nomination mean to you? That is Canada's Grammys. That's your country acknowledging your hard work, your talent, and your music.
Again, I think it meant, to me, it was a big thrill, but I had no experience yet to appreciate it as much as Andreas, the singer, or Frank, or Scott, or Marc, who had been in the band, who had been, playing and paying their dues in that band a lot longer than I was, So for them, it was a big thrill, and it was something that they deserved, For me, I was like that whole 2-year period was just nonstop. It was like I was on a cloud. So it's just accolade after accolade, or doing this or touring with Wang Chung, or playing, First Avenue, the club where Prince shot Purple Rain, or playing the Ritz and the Bottom Line in New York City, and having Harvey Keitel walk in on your sound check when you're in New York City. It's like, it just kept, doing a 3 a.m. slot for the Children's Miracle Network telethon, with Fleetwood Mac, and getting like flown to California, and then chauffeured for like 3 days in California to do this one song at 3 a.m. and you're lip syncing. It's like, what? Spending that kind of money, being wined and dined by Derek Schulman, who's the singer in Gentle Giant, who was the A&R guy for Polygram, who signed us. That whole thing was just, it was like living a dream, So for them, I bet, that those Juno nominations and those 7 Casby nominations, meant more to them than it did to me. To me, I was proud of it and thrilled, but it wasn't my band in terms of I had just joined the band, right? So I'm still the new guy. I hadn't done all the gigs at the Shad and all those clubs, with them before.
When you think back to that period of time with 8 Seconds, is there a favorite memory?
Tons. The big shows, being really nervous, peeing in an empty beer bottle backstage at First Avenue because Paul Young's tour and Wang Chung's tour have met up in Minneapolis. So they decide to put Paul Young and Wang Chung together, and they decide to take their opening acts and put them at First Avenue. And everybody's saying, "Oh, yeah, Prince is in the audience. Well, Prince is here," And I remember there's a tiny little dressing room right off the stage, right? And I remember being so nervous I had to pee, and there wasn't a bathroom, and we're about to go on. So I'm literally peeing in an empty beer bottle before we go on stage. And I remember I play with these pretty heavy picks, right? They're like a Jazz 3 XL from Jim Dunlop. You hear that? They're like a heavy, thick pick. I found a really thin pick that I was just fiddling with in the dressing room. And I was so nervous that next thing I know, I'm on stage, I'm playing, and I'm like, what's wrong with my guitar? I've got no attack, and I'm still holding
Just this
this,
feather of a pick.
this super thin pick that I
It's
was
merely a
just,
suggestion while you use it.
it's just something I picked up that was just lying there in the dressing room, and I was fiddling with it. Next thing you know, I'm on stage and it's still between my fingers because my head is like, I'm nervous, I'm somewhere else. So those are great thrills, opening up for David Bowie, the tour with Wang Chung, and playing these wonderful, wonderful rooms. But, above all of that, I think the rehearsals in Andy's basement for me, learning about songwriting, learning about putting the proper guitar part in the proper place, learning about being with other people and not poo-pooing on them and just like they become brothers, and how to get along. It's a very social business. The hang is almost, if not more important than the talent, because there's talent. There's a million amazing musicians out there, and there's a million guys who can outplay and outsing me, but they're still in their living rooms because they can't get out there, or they can't deal with being around other people, or there's a bunch of reasons. The first time I met Dan Preston, who gave me that wonderful introduction, I loved him in 30 seconds. And I remember telling Sean, our tour manager, I go, this guy's got to stay. I just felt like the hang was good with Dan. I felt he was a pro, and I felt that there wouldn't be any kind of hang-ups, no egos, team. You got to be a team player. And I learned that in 8 seconds. I'm still learning it. You learn every day how to interact with people. And it's not always easy. You have to deal with people's insecurities. You have to deal with other people's attitudes. You have to accept how they are, and not impose your will on them. Right? Even though you think they're full of shit, you don't say it, or you say it to someone else. But I learned a lot about that, in my first band.
And when you're on tour, I mean, 95% of your day isn't on stage. Like you're on stage for an hour and a half of the entire day. So you got to get along with these people all day long while you're not doing music.
Yeah, and people think it's super glamorous, and the only glamorous part is when the lights go out, or like lights go down, and you walk on stage and people cheer. It's like, oh, okay, this is the payback. I know this is where I'm supposed to be. This is my most comfortable place on earth, So that's the payback. And then you get off stage and you go back into the fart tube, right? Because that's what a tour bus is. It's a fart tube. And you deal with people who are tired, who only sleep 2 hours a night, who you get to a place like this last German bit was rough. There was no catering. Now I sound like a diva saying, well, how come there's no catering here? But usually you walk in when you're on a tour. When we were doing BTO in Canada, even though it was, junior hockey arenas, there was always, you'd walk in, you can grab a coffee. You just woke up, you took a piss, you can go in the arena, grab a coffee and hang out. And, but in Germany, a lot of our sightseeing was done looking for places to take a piss and looking for places to have a coffee in the morning. Because you'd walk into the room and there's guys putting up scaffolding and there's nothing there, right?
You just want the necessities. I mean, give me the basics here.
Well, what's the first thing you do when you wake up? You have a pee and you have a coffee, and you couldn't even get that. Although we did some really cool sightseeing because of looking for places. We ended up discovering a bunch of places, but yeah, so it's not glamorous, missing your children and being around guys who one day they're super happy and the next day they're missing their kids, or they're in a bad mood, or they have stomach cramps, or their back is sore. I had a sore back the whole 3.5 weeks we were gone because I couldn't stand up in the bus. I couldn't fully stand up. Richard and I are pretty tall. We're both always hunched, so we're both stretching in the dressing rooms, trying to stretch out our lower backs because you're sleeping in a coffin, right? And you can't stand up. So for us, it was rough. It was rough for everybody, but you gotta love that stuff too. It's a young man's game. When I was 22 touring with 8 Seconds, we had to beat the crap camper, and we didn't care, what we ate, and we drank and partied and slept because we played when we were hungover. It didn't matter. You're 22, you can do anything. You're indestructible.
And they were the
You
best
know,
of times.
yeah, they were the best of times. Now, I understand why the Rolling Stones fly back home after each show. Even though they've got all the necessities, if not more, but we're not the Rolling Stones. So, we had a wonderful double-decker tour bus with a wonderful driver, and but it wasn't super glamorous. Let's just put it that way. you know
So we have a fan question. This person actually knew you growing up. So this is from Robin Bruce. And Robin
ah
says, I played hockey with Marc Parent at the outdoor rink in Elmer, Quebec. He had a mini afro back then. Ask him if he used to be able to put the puck where they keep the peanut butter. Always a great guy, even as a young fellow. So I don't know what that means, but
Robin Bruce, wow, he was a good hockey player. I was not a good hockey player. I was a good house league hockey player. I was in competition B with Mr. Kolish as a coach, and I was a defenseman, and competition B was like the top of my skill level, And then I got the next year, my dad said, "Listen, I'm tired of going to Point Gatineau and Touraine and Hull and Shawville and Louisville. That's it. You're going back to house league." So in house league, I could score a hat trick. I was like pretty good, but when I decided to play guitar, when I found out I could play guitar, the skates kind of like went south. Guitar took over, my sporting, my hockey career.
I have a story that I think you'll like. So a year ago, I went out to a Strange Advance concert in Ottawa.
Oh,
And on the bill was Images in Vogue, The Box, and 416. And I got this shirt from that show. And during Strange Advance set, they brought up Andreas from 8 Seconds. And the whole band, Strange Advance as the backing band for Andreas, performed Kiss You When It's Dangerous.
I saw it. And he's still doing it, I think, or he's about to. It's become a thing, and which is great. People want to hear Andreas sing. He's a wonderful singer, wonderful, wonderful chap in general. Love the guy. And for me, Andy is like the sound of a great singer. Like when I hear his voice, it feels like home. Because it was so important in my life, that band and that sound was so important that it's just stuck there. If you go to my Facebook page, I did a bunch of videos during COVID. It started off with just me being bored with an iPhone and acoustic guitar, and ended up like a year later, like these 4-month-long productions. And I had Jean-Claude Caprara, who was our lighting guy on 8 Seconds, had him edit. And then I would just, talk to my sister in San Diego. You want to sing on this? Of course. And I talked to Peter Dowse in Vancouver. You want to play bass on this? Sure. Everybody had like nothing to do, right? So I had this idea to do Live and Die in LA, a Wang Chung tune. And I was hearing Andy's voice, I wonder why we stay alone here. I was hearing his voice. So I asked him, you want to do this? And we did this video of To Live and Die in LA with Scott playing drums, and Andy, and it's one of my favorites that we did. And I'm so glad he's out there, singing, and because he's got a great voice, and he's a true artist, and he's got a bunch of songs. He's always writing songs. So, who knows? Love to hear.
I think he's here in Ottawa with me as well.
Yes, he's got a video production company, actually. Anytime we could play together. I do a solo show, where I go play in Elmer and all my friends show up. and Scott and Andy and March will show up from 8 seconds and we'll play Kiss You. And the place just goes bananas. All the iPhones come out and everybody loves that song because it's one of those songs that reminds you where you were when you're, 18 or 19 or whatever. So
At
yeah,
that
very
show,
proud of that.
you're proud of that? I'd be proud
Oh
of
yeah.
that. At
Yeah.
that show, I met a couple musicians, and I have some kind words sent in from Danielle Volge, bassist for the Box.
Oh,
And
oh,
Danielle says, Mark is a longtime friend, a great guitar player, and a great musician. Love you, buddy. So that's Danielle Volge. And then the
cool.
only thing better than getting a quote from a member of the Box is getting a quote from two members of the Box. So this is from Jean-Marc Pisapia, the singer from the Box, and he says, all I can say is that he has inherited one of the hardest jobs in the music industry, which is filling in for a guy who is already a legend. And he's doing a pretty darn good job at it. So hats off to Mark. That's from Jean-Marc.
Wow. Thank you, Jean-Marc. Actually, Jean-Marc and I worked together. He probably doesn't remember, but we did a Ritz Crackers jingle together at his place. So yeah, salut Jean-Marc. Thank you for that.
We have a fan question from Evelyn Withrow. Her question is, if you were not a musician, what type of work could you see yourself doing? And what kind of work would give you the same sense of fulfillment that playing music does?
I love children and I love listening to people. So maybe I would have studied psychology, maybe children's psychology. I love, having discussions about emotional intelligence. I did 19 years in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous for cocaine addiction, and that was such a blessing to just learn about yourself, learn about how to deal with people, addictions, relationships, father son relationships, all kinds of it was, the 12 step programs are like, they're group therapy. You go in there because you want to stop using drugs and then it works. You stop using drugs, then you keep going because you love what you're hearing in these rooms and you love what you're discovering about yourself in these rooms. The biggest gift I ever got was getting clean in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, because I stopped using and I was able to just become a bit more emotionally intelligent. And it was fantastic free therapy, you know? So yeah, I think listening to people and helping people would be something that I would probably have ended up doing because I do it naturally. I'm just a people person. I love listening to people. I feel that listening is a lost art. My mom used to say you've got two ears and one mouth, so you should listen twice as much as you talk. And I feel that listening intently to people is an act of love, right? You respect them and you listen to them and you don't jump in as soon as they stop talking to start talking about yourself. A lot of people do that. You'll hear a conversation sometimes as two people talking about themselves and nobody's listening to each other, right? It's like it's not going anywhere. It's just doing this. And I feel that it's a lost art of being able to listen. And it's wonderful to listen to other people, you know. So I think to answer your question, sorry, long story long, I would probably psychology would have been a direction, or and teaching.
Yeah, I think we all just want to be seen and heard and feel appreciated, really. Do you feel that you're an empath? Like you really feel the emotions of other people around you?
I do. I'm highly sensitive. I'm sensitive to light. I'm sensitive to loud noises. I'm sensitive to 8-year-old girls screaming. 10-year-old girls. I've got two girls, an 8 and a 10-year-old. I'm sensitive to, to all that stuff. I think it's what allows me to be a musician, allows me to do what I do. But yeah, I'm very sensitive to people's moods and people's attitudes.
In which ways did becoming a father change you as a person? You're talking
Oh
about
my,
your two girls.
oh, it completely changed my life. When you become do you have kids? when you become a dad, you learn to love about 4 layers deeper in your heart than you've ever felt before. You didn't know you could love like that, you know. And being a musician is hard, the business of it, trying to sell yourself, trying to socialize and work a room and try to make connections and try to get this gig and that gig and always being on the phone and, just working the routine of being a musician, because as a musician, work gets you work. So the more you gig, the more you keep playing. People see you. Hey, could you come play my bar mitzvah? Could you come play my daughter's 13, your birthday party? Could you do my wedding? Could you do this? So you're always working. And before having kids, it was always all about me, and it was wonderful to stop worrying about myself and start taking care of these two wonderful human beings. When your daughter's choking on a crust of bread, you can't be thinking about, your next gig. Your daughter's choking on a crust of bread. So that's what's important, and that's why I said no to April Wine, 8 years ago. I had just become a dad. And it wasn't the easiest thing to do, but I had to say no because, I had this little human being in my hands that needed me. Right. So being a dad is the most wonderful thing in the world. I highly recommend it. It's not easy, but it really turned me into a man because I stopped just thinking about myself and I started thinking about, okay, I have to take care of these wonderful little girls and I have to be a good example for them. So how do I do this? And how do I talk about this? And, like example, the mother and I have been separated longer than we were together. We were only together 4 years to make these two wonderful little girls. And we've been separated now for 5 years. Right. And it's not easy, dealing with that separation sometimes, but I've never talked bad about her in front of the girls. Never. Because I don't want my girls to see me as their first male role model talking crap about women, right? You don't want that. So you have to think about that stuff. How do you talk about other people in front of your daughters? Because they're sponges, man. They're like absorbing everything you do, say. They put me in my place. Dad, you burped and you didn't say excuse me. Oh, sorry.
You also don't want to color the way they look at their mom either.
Exactly. So you stay neutral, and the mother and I work a lot better separate than we did together. So that's great. It's all about the girls. It's all about them being happy and feeling secure in both situations, But my point is that you have to think of a lot of stuff and not just about yourself anymore. And it's wonderful. It helps you grow as a human being. That's why I say I become a man when I became a dad, and a short order cook too.
Do your girls think that their dad is a rock star or just some schmuck at home that takes out the garbage?
I don't think I'm a schmuck at home that takes out the garbage. I think I'm a pretty cool dad. They came to see me play in on the BTO tour when we were in Laval, and the place was packed, and I made sure I went with Taylor, our photographer. I went and to see where they were sitting so that when I hit the stage, I'd know exactly where to look to see them. And, even if I hadn't done that, I couldn't have missed them because they were like standing up and, and it was just, and I asked Taylor, I said, you got to get this on film. I want to see my daughter's reaction to them watching their dad, when he hits the stage. And he got some of that. And it's fantastic footage. Thank you, Taylor, for that, and I think if I was in Dua Lipa's band, or if I played in a more popular band, I'd be even cooler because I'm kind of like the old guy, and April Wine's like a classic rock band, But I think they think I'm pretty cool, I respect my children. I try to treat them. I try to not have that father talking down to his children kind of relationship. I try to give them their space and be on their level. And I'm very young at heart. I'm a kid. So it's easy for me to go there. It's easy for me to act like a kid when I'm around him, So, and give them that space and give them some respect, because kids don't get a lot of respect. When you're a kid, everybody, shut up, right? You're a kid. So I try to be a good dad.
Maybe the best example that you're providing is someone that has a big dream and goes after that dream and achieves success and does what they love and what they're passionate about. So it's you actually showing that through your actions.
I think that's how they learn. You can talk all you want, but it's how you walk. And I keep telling them that I was, when I came back from the European tour, Livia, my eldest, she says, "You're not allowed to go on the road anymore." She said, "I missed you too much." And I told her, I said, "Isn't it great that dad gets to play guitar and sing and travel a little bit and do what he loves? And he can, you know, buy food and buy you clothes and take care of you and pay for stuff." And they know they know that I really appreciate what I do and that I worked hard for it, and that I love what I do. And I keep telling them, I don't care what you do as long as you're happy, you know. And right now, um, it's scary because Livia has these abilities, these music abilities. She's a good drummer, she's a good singer, she plays guitar, plays piano, and I'm like, oh no. She loves music. Today on the way to school, I said, because we always listen to the Beatles, right? Good parenting. And I told her, I said, "Have you heard of the Rolling Stones?" She goes, "I think so." And then I gave her the spiel. I said, "Well, people used to say that the Rolling Stones were the bad boys and the Beatles were the good guys, and they had a competition. But I said, in fact, I said, the Rolling Stones came from rich families and the Beatles were the poor guys. And there was always a competition. I'm not into the Beatles, I'm into the Rolling Stones, or vice versa. So we listened to the Rolling Stones this morning. And at the end, I was like, "Okay, so who won?" And she goes, "Nah," she says, "It's the Beatles." So we do that a lot. I have an 8 kilometer commute in the car to take him to school. So that's our listening to music, zone, where we analyze music and listen to drum beats and listen to tambourines and guitars. And we're always talking about that stuff. So that's really cool.
This is Parenting 101. This is university on wheels every morning.
It is. Absolutely. They each get their turn to play DJ. So they're on my phone and they get to pick the songs. So we
Are you
go
tired
from
of Taylor Swift yet, or what?
No, they haven't. They don't listen to Taylor Swift.
Maybe I'll
So they
edit this
listen.
part out in case they're watching. We don't want to turn them on to Taylor Swift.
So they like Imagine Dragons, which is great stuff. Dua Lipa, it's all super well produced stuff, and good songs, right? A good song is a good song. I'm a sucker for any good melody, and good production, of course. And we listen to a lot of the Beatles. Amelia is into these kiddie songs now, so she's like, when she's on deck, and it's like, okay, there's going to be a bit more of some funny kiddie songs, but yeah, Beatles, they beat the Rolling Stones this morning.
That's a very important moment in their youth right there. So let's dive into your career with April Wine. There's a lot of fan questions sprinkled out in this portion of the interview, and I'm going to start with two questions that are basically the same question twice. So Barry Hussey asks, when did you first become a fan of April Wine? And then Jeff Weingars asks, what is Mark's first memory of April Wine? Was it a song on the radio, saw them in concert, that kind of thing?
Never saw April Wine in concert as a kid. April Wine were always on the radio. I never bought an April Wine record because I didn't have to. Every time I went somewhere or was someplace at the arcade or wherever, or April Wine was always on the radio. So for me, I mean, "Wouldn't Want to Lose Your Love," which is a song we're not doing yet, and I can't wait to play that, was a big April Wine tune for me. "Bad Side of the Moon," "On Fire for You, Baby," which is my favorite song to sing. "Roller," of course, were all songs that stuck out. I mean, we're talking about a legendary Canadian band here, right? So um, those were the songs that really stuck out. And yeah, I don't have a memory of seeing them live because I never did. Never got a chance to.
My favorite April Wine song has always been Sign of the Gypsy Queen. And to me, when I think of April Wine, I think great songs, super tasty guitar riffs, and a
Mm,
master class in harmonies. And Sign of the Gypsy Queen has all of those.
absolutely. And it's not an April Wine song. It's actually a song that they took. I forget the original writer, which was they did a masterful job of redoing it. They gave it its
They made it
identity.
their own for sure.
They made yeah, and could have been a lady too is a hot chocolate tune, and Bad Side of the Moon is an Elton John tune, and they had that ability. April Wine, which were great because they had the ability to take these songs that were maybe B-sides or not known or weren't really hits for the other acts and turn them into their own songs and turn them into hits. You know, they were very talented that way in giving it their spin.
This episode has been brought to you by the Women in the Music Industry podcast. It's hosted by music producer Rob Wells, who has worked with global superstars like Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, and Selena Gomez. Through his 1-hour interviews, he shines a spotlight on the remarkable women who are breaking barriers and making their mark in the music industry. Some of his notable guests include Morgan Lander of the multi-million selling metal band Kitty, and Pam Shane, who co-wrote Genie in a Bottle for Christina Aguilera. If you're a fan of the Joel Martin Mastery podcast, you'll love the Women in the Music Industry podcast, which is available on all platforms. We have a fan question from Patrice Gauthier. We got all the French Canadians coming out here. Patrice's question is, tell us how Miles got to know you and picked you for his replacement.
So Richard Lancier, who was actually, I'll go one step before Richard. Paul-André Lamarche, who is a drummer friend of mine, grew up with Paul-André. We used to jam together in Elmer all the time. He, about 15 years ago, was talking with Brian Greenway at a jam session, probably at Smoke Meat Pete's or something like that in Montreal. And Brian said they were looking for a bass player. And Paul-André recommended Richard Lancier. And Richard Lancier used to play the Quebec and Ontario blues circuit with Cal Tremblay, who's a legendary blues, harmonica player, singer in Quebec. And I knew Richard because I played that same circuit, and I still do with my band Wang Dang Doodle. So Richard, when Miles started to, want to get a replacement, Richard heard my voice. He said, I think Marc would do a good job, So they called me up, and I actually auditioned for Miles on the phone. This is, 10 years ago. I remember doing roller and screaming and on the phone. And he liked what he heard on the phone. And then I was working at the Yellow Pages at that point because I needed a day job. I was starving as a musician. And Miles said, I need you from Wednesday to Sunday. And it pays this much. And are you available? Can you do it? So I went to the president of the Yellow Pages and I said, I just got an offer to be the singer on April Wine. And she was like, are you crazy? That's amazing. Because everybody knows April Wine, right? And I go, but they need me from Wednesday to Sunday. And this was a full-time job I had. I was a sales rep, And she said, you can't do both. You'll end up not doing a good job in April Wine and not doing a good job at the Yellow Pages. So I had to think about that. And Lydia was 18 months old.
Wow.
And that was the main deal. I couldn't leave, my baby. So
if you didn't have a kid, you would have done it in a heartbeat, probably. Or maybe not.
I would have tried to do both because the money was really good at Yellow Pages. The money was good at April Wine too for being a musician. But I was making more money at the Yellow Pages. I would have made more money at the Yellow Pages, but probably, I was not into marketing. I always have, guitar picks in my pocket. And I remember doing all these marketing meetings at Yellow Pages, and I would be rubbing my two guitar picks together saying, what am I doing here? I don't like this stuff. I want to go play guitar. But it was paying the rent, right? It was a good day job. So fast forward 8 years later, Miles was still hanging in there. They hadn't found their guy. They auditioned some guys. The auditions did not go well. Miles did not like what he heard. I, in the meantime, had posted all these videos during COVID on Facebook, and Richard, again, bless his heart, he said, "Well, remember you listened to Marc 8 years ago? He auditioned for you on the phone." And Miles didn't remember me, so they went in to my Facebook page and started listening to the videos I'd done. And Miles was like, there's potential there. So Miles calls me up. He goes, what do you think about, filling in and doing the gig and all that? And I'm like, now I've got two daughters, but they're older. This is post-COVID. I've left the Yellow Pages. I'm a full-time musician again. So of course I said yes. I couldn't believe I was getting a second chance.
That doesn't happen very frequently, right? Normally an opportunity comes and goes.
No. Yeah, that's it, especially in this business. So I took out my iPhone, an acoustic guitar, and I just played him. I recorded maybe 3 April Wine songs. And then I sent it to Miles and I said, listen, this is as naked as it gets. It's like my iPhone and an acoustic guitar and my voice singing in the phone. If you like the voice and you feel that I could do your songs justice, let's talk, right? I sent him the email. And he's listening to the email in Nova Scotia, and one of his best friends calls him on the phone. And he's talking to his friend on the phone, and the tape, my recording is playing in the background. And he asks his best friend, he says, what do you think of this? And his friend says, well, that's just you playing guitar and singing. And it was me. So whoever that guy is, I don't know who he is, but he got me the gig. Because Miles was like, yeah, Miles was maybe on the fence still or wasn't sure or whatever. But if his best friend thought that the guy singing, through his computer right now was him, then that's how I got the gig.
You got a little third-party validation there somehow.
Yeah, I still don't know who he is. I don't know who that guy was,
That's wild. We have
so that's how I got the gig like 8 years later.
We have a fan question from Steve Kerr. And the question is, in all your days as a musician, did you ever think you would become a member of April Wine? Then he says, cheers to Mr. Miles. He picked a brilliant person with Mr. Marc Perrin. Cheers, pal. That's from Steve.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Steve. No, I never thought. I thought it was really cool 8 years ago when I got the call the first time. I couldn't believe I had to say no. So I figured that was it. And I just kept playing because you love playing. You feel good when you sing. I feel like it sounds silly, but I feel like I fly when I sing. It's liberating. It feels so good and natural to do. So yeah, never thought, to answer the question, never in my wildest dreams. I had this Steely Dan tribute band. We were 14 on stage, which I really enjoyed doing. And I used to fantasize that Donald Fagen would give me a call, and then I'd had these scenarios where he couldn't sing anymore, but he wanted to play. So I would do the, that was my fantasy of being called to do Steely Dan. But yeah, April Wine, man, fuck, it's amazing. I'm so blessed.
It's hard to make money as a 14-piece band when you have to take your guarantee and divide it by 14. But I'm sure it sounds incredible, right? 14 musicians would be the dream.
Oh, we didn't play that much because there was just too many people in the band. But we had the brass and the backup singers and 2 keyboard players, and it was fantastic. It was so cool to do. That's a heavy catalog to play. Heavy songs, and it was so fun. Good challenge to pull that off. And we had all the musicians in Montreal coming to listen to us play with their arms crossed in the front row, It was cool.
You need an old school bus just to get all the members to the gig.
Yeah, no kidding.
Do you remember the exact moment where you received the news that you had been accepted into April Wine, that you got the gig itself? And what range of emotions did you go through in that moment?
It's funny. It was the same situation for 8 seconds. I remember meeting Frank and Jerry in their apartment, and I had brought this joint, you know, and we're talking, and I'm talking with Frank, and well, I brought this joint to celebrate me joining the band. I was waiting, nothing was being said, and he just said, "Okay, light the joint. You're in the band." And then, you know, years later with Miles, it was like we're talking on the phone, and he goes, "Okay, well, it pays this much. It does this. It does that. And can you do that? Are you available?" And I just kept saying yes, 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 yes. And I'm waiting. He's not saying it. And Miles would just say, "You're waiting for me to say it, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm waiting for you to say it." And he goes, "Congratulations, you got the gig." And I was like, "Oh my God." I couldn't believe it. I remember it was summer, it was August, and I was just like really thrilled. And then I thought, holy cow, do I have a lot of work to do? Because I've got to sing these songs like I've been singing them my whole life. I got to sing Roller like I wrote Roller, and I didn't. And so I had to just play them and play them. Nobody on earth listened to more April Wine 3 years ago than I did. Just learning these songs, playing them, standing up, sitting down, playing them with lyrics, without lyrics, just playing the music, just singing, learning everything by heart. It was tough because you have to make them your own. So I'm up there serving the song. If I'm singing Gypsy Queen, I'm not thinking of the way Miles sang it. I'm thinking of serving the song. So I'm singing it just like I'm hearing it on the record. And hopefully it sounds just like you remember it. That's my job. Serve the song. Don't imitate Miles Goodwin. Don't try to sound like him. Just sound like you, and respect the melody, the phrasing, respect the song, and play it with love and respect, because it's Gypsy Queen from April Wine, right? And that's what I've done. That's been my approach. I just want to play the song like a fan hears it. I'm just the guy up there singing it. I'm not imitating Miles. I just happen to sound like him. Our ranges are similar. Our voices are similar. So it's not hard for me to sing those songs. First gig I did in Calgary, I was so nervous. And I asked the lighting guy, I said, light up the crowd. I want to see eyeballs. I want to look at people in the eyes. Because they're all like, who's this guy? Where's Miles? Miles hadn't passed, right? So I just told him, I said, guys, I'm as much of a fan as you guys are. I should be in the audience with you. I'm up here singing these tunes. I know it's going to be weird for you, but just know this. I love these songs as much as you do. And let's just have fun. And it went over. First song, they're looking at me like this. Second song, their arms are opening up a bit more. Third song, the arms are down. Fourth song, they're doing this. And fifth song, they're doing this. So it took a while, like a couple of tunes in, but it's the power of the song. If you go see Styx and you listen to Gowan singing Dennis DeYoung parts, you know the song, you know the parts, you just want to hear the song. And Gowan's a great example. He sounds like Dennis DeYoung as well, but he's not. But it's okay. It takes you, if you're one of those, oh, well, he's not an original member of the band, internet naysayers, come see the show and listen to the songs and have a good time. And if you don't like what you hear, then don't come to the show, listen to the records. But everybody who's seen the band so far, they all have a good time, and it's the power of the song. They just listen to these songs and it brings them back. And that's what you want to hear. So if I'm doing that properly, I'm doing my job.
What's awesome about seeing Styx with Gowan singing for them is they also do Gowan songs, so you get to hear a Criminal Mind and some of the other hits. When I was really young, I won a prize pack, which was Styx concert tickets, an album, and a T-shirt. And I went to the concert knowing the name Styx, but not knowing if I knew the songs or not. And man, it was one of the best shows I've ever seen. Almost every song I went, oh, that Sticks. Like I knew the song, I just didn't know who sang it. And I was blown away. So Sticks and Gowan together is like two superpowers uniting.
Yeah, you know, it's all about the music. I had a lady in Kingston. We were doing the Steve Miller show. We opened up for Steve Miller, and she sees me. I'm talking with my sister. I remember she sees me and she starts shaking and crying. And she's walking towards me. She goes, "I've been listening to you all my life, and you're the greatest singer." And you know, and she thinks I'm Miles. She doesn't know that I'm not Miles, you know. And I'm just gave her a big hug and thanked her for coming to the show, and you know, thanked her for her compliments. And it's it's the songs that matter. She didn't know that I wasn't the guy, and it didn't matter whether I was the guy or not the guy. She had spent a great evening listening to the songs of her youth. You know, that's all that matters.
Were you nervous joining a band that had already achieved so much success, or were you more excited knowing you're the right guy for that job?
Both.
Both.
I've been nervous. I'm just now, honestly, after 3 years, just now not as nervous before a show. Um, because I feel like now the songs are my own. They're not my songs, but I can make them my own. I've brought my enthusiasm and my tone to the songs, and the songs are so strong that they play themselves, really, right? Everybody knows them. So it's an easy sell. It's not as if I'm singing a bunch of songs nobody's heard before. Um, but yeah, that first year, it was like it was pretty nerve-wracking, you know. But like the first time we played Montreal, oh boy, I had my friends from Ottawa, I had family, I had my friends from Montreal. I mean, nobody wants you to do bad. Nobody wants to see you fail. They all want to see you succeed, but yet you know that all your friends are there and you're like friggin' nervous, you know. And I remember walking on stage and seeing this wacky little couple in the front row. They were just like, they're just, you know, oddballs kind of deal. And they brought me back to like, oh, this is Le Bistrot à Jojo on Saint Denis Street on a Friday night. This is the same thing, right? They grounded me right away. So it felt really good to see that little couple having a good time, because it's the same little couple I've seen a million times in a million bars, right? And it brought the whole thing back into perspective. Yes, it's April Wine. Yes, they're like a multi-million-dollar selling band and all that stuff. But when you get out there and play, you're playing for people. People are people, you know, and it brings it back to what I know I can do and what I know I can do well, right? I've been doing this all my life. I can sing and play guitar. I've been doing it all my life. So I don't try not to get too caught up in the whole history behind the band before a show, because, you know, it could freak you out. You know, I'm sure Phil X did the same thing in Bon Jovi. He must have been like, oh my God, I'm playing in Bon Jovi, right? But then after a few gigs, he probably said, man, this is just like, it's like a club, only bigger, right? He did his thing, and, you know, there's a whole, you know, Ardell and Journey probably as well, you know, and it must have been huge for him too. These are huge bands.
I did an interview recently where they brought up Phil X saying he's got the best job in the world, where I think in his 50s, suddenly he's the guitarist for one of the biggest bands in the world. Like he's just out there living the dream starting in his 50s.
Yeah, well, you know, he's a mega talent. He's a great singer, great guitar player, and he's so devoted. You know, he's a hard worker. You can tell. He always has a guitar in his hands. Always. You know, what's weird about looking at an Eddie Van Halen picture? Well, what's weird is when you see Eddie without a guitar in his hands. That's weird, right? Because every time you see Eddie, he's got a guitar in his hands. So Phil X kind of gives me that same kind of vibe. You watch him without a guitar, and how come he doesn't have a guitar in his hands?
Did you see during the Stanley Cup playoffs, Triumph performed before one of the Edmonton games, first live performance in 17 years, and Phil X was one of the guitarists on stage with them to
Ah,
round
and
out the
and
three
Todd,
piece into a five piece, I think.
yeah, and Todd Kearns too, who's amazing Canadian talent. He's the hardest working guy I know. He's always playing with Slash or playing in the Vegas or playing with Triumph or doing Took, or he's a mega talented guy. You know, never sounds bad, and he's always playing.
We have a question from Diane Massé, and she says, "Congrats, Mark. So
Zian
proud."
Massé,
Yeah,
Zian Massé, that name rings a bell.
Diane Massé. She says,
Yeah, I
"Congrats,
know her.
Mark. So proud of you. I'm wondering what's the most challenging part of following in someone's footsteps as the new singer, and what's one thing you wish people understood about it?"
Hmm. The hardest part was making the songs my own. I said this a few minutes ago. Not sounding like I'm going through the motions of this other guy singing an April Wine tune. There's a million guys out there singing April Wine songs. I had to make them sound like the band because I'm playing in the band, and I had to make them my own. So it was like navigating that line of play for the song, respect the song, and then make it your own as well. But don't go into imitation territory, you know. And it doesn't bother me anymore what people say on the internet, like who's the new guy? He's not an original member of the band, I'm sorry, I was 5 years old when April Wine started. I mean, people grow old. We don't want to see our famous rock stars. We don't want to see them grow old. We don't want to see them pass. You know, we want to see them like we remember them, right? Um, I'm just out there serving the song. And I know I say that a lot, but it's true. My focus is always play this song, sing it with your heart, play guitar like you're busting out of jail, you know, and and respect the work. I think about Miles every show. I've got I hear his voice in my head every time I'm singing. I see pictures of him when we're playing live, you know, and I'm hoping that he likes what he's hearing. I'm hoping that he likes what I'm how I'm presenting his work because it's his work. And I'm hoping people have a good time and just go right back to how they on their first kiss or their wedding song or their first date song or the power, right? The power of the song, right? I'm hoping they live that. And I see it. I see it happen. It's a beautiful thing.
The band had released 16 studio albums before you joined. How does one tackle such a massive discography? And it's not just on one instrument. It's not like you just have to learn the vocals for 16 albums or just the guitar. It's both. Like you have to double duty learning a 16 album discography. How do you get started? Did you have a process where you talk with the other members and you go, okay, these are the 16 songs we're most likely to play in a concert. So let's get those down so at least we can start doing shows. And then you start expanding with a few more songs you learn per week or per month. How does that work?
That's pretty much it. I mean, April Wine they were still playing, when I joined. They were a live band that they didn't play as often as we do now, but they had a set list. And these are songs through the years that they knew that the fans loved and that needed to be played. So we started there. You know, they gave me a list of songs. It might have been 30 songs to learn, and then we did rehearsals. And I remember being at my mom's place on the patio outside, and just starting to learn. Could have been a lady, and I was just going over the lyrics. There's no secret. It's just singing it and singing it and doing it and doing it. I wish there was a secret, but the first year I had an iPad and a Bluetooth page turner, okay? And in front of my monitor and I would sing. And every now and then, if I get one of those brain farts where I could just look down at the iPad and I'd see like the first few lines of text, and then that would send me, then I would be good. And then after a year, tossed it aside. And because the songs were being absorbed by my muscle memory. And now, I just do them. I know them. So, and at one point, Brian Greenway, who's, still an original member of the band, he joined in 77. He and I would get together and work on the songs and the guitar parts at my place. And one time he showed up with another list and he said, "These are the American hits." And I go, "Huh?" Yeah, these are songs that were big in the States that were never played in Canada. So 16 albums, like what, 15 live albums, like
compilation albums, 34 singles. Yeah.
It's never ending. Yeah, that's just like I said, for like a year, every day, I just learned the material. My poor neighbors, for a year,
they know the discography as well as you do.
They knew the set list before anybody else.
You made them sign an NDA when you started practicing. We have a question from Weldon McKenzie. What is your favorite lead guitar break in the discography?
I like Crash and Burn. There's a great intro in Crash and Burn and a great ripping solo from Miles with some wah-wah. I love doing that. I love Anything You Want because I can stretch a little bit on that one. There's like there are breaks where I can improvise a bit more. I love the intro to Just Between You and Me because it's a melodic solo. I like the solos in I Like to Rock because, again, they're so melodic and they fit the tune. I like the breaks between the two guitars in Roller, Gypsy Queen, the theme in Gypsy Queen, the ending. I love Brian's solo in Gypsy Queen. That's like one of the great, guitar solos in rock. I love to hear him play that. It's such a great gig. There's fun guitar to play and fun songs to sing. I'm a lucky guy.
The song Roller is the band's most popular song on Spotify with 24 million plays. Why do you think people love Roller so much?
It's got a great hook off the top that just brings you into the song, and then it's got great verses that are a really cool little shuffle that just makes you want to dance. And then there's a section where it becomes harmonized guitar parts, which is typical classic rock, and it's got a great storyline, right? The girl who's a roller in Vegas, spending her money and nothing can stop her, right? It's got all the elements of a great hook and a great tune, great storyline, great melody, great guitar. There's a video on YouTube. You can see Miles talking about Roller, how he'll dissect it and how he likes it. I forget the title of those videos, but On the Record maybe, or something like that. If you want to check it out, it's pretty cool.
What was the most difficult song for you to learn on guitar, and then the most difficult to lock down vocally?
That's a good question. For some reason, I still have a hard time with I Like to Rock vocally because it's kind of like shouted and talked and sung. There's not a melody line I could hook my teeth into. So I was like, all right, something's got you going tonight, doing all she can. It's all right. Come on, can't you see? That's cool. But every now and then it's hard to explain. It's not like Just Between You and Me where the melody's so strong I can sink my teeth into it and stay into that. I Like to Rock. I can get sidetracked a little bit, So that one's a little tougher for me to sing. I don't feel I'm doing as good a job as I can yet on that one. And guitar wise, there's one part, I'll be totally honest with you guys. There's one part I still struggle with. In roller, that do 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 do, right when there's trades between the guitars, the last trade is my part, and those arpeggios are still, I practice them, and every now and then I'll just go do 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 do. I'll stumble a bit, so those ones, that one's still a bit of a challenge, but the rest is just fun, and not easy music to play by any means. But the more you play them, the more the muscle memory gets involved, and the more I can sing and play at the same time. I've been playing other people's music for 40 years, so you kind of learn by singing other people's stuff and playing guitar. You develop that independence, you know, and you're able to sing one thing and play another thing and make it sound like you've been doing it all your life, you know.
The band has a few songs that are in different time signatures, like the song Telling Me Lies, I believe is in 6/4. Is it challenging to play songs in different time signatures, or is it all the same to you? You just count a little differently.
Say Hello is in a funky time signature, but I don't hear it as a funky time signature. I just listen to it, and I just play it, you know. It's not a challenge. But again, I'm not the drummer. I'm not playing drums on this, but I don't think Roy has much of a problem with it either. But he's a pretty talented musician. Um, but yeah, I mean, when I listen to music in general, a lot of musicians that I know have this analytical ear. And when they listen to music, they're always analyzing it. They're hearing chords, they're hearing progressions, they're hearing melodies, they're hearing counterpoint. I don't I don't have that. I listen to music like a fan. I just I just absorb it. I don't like analyze chord progressions in real time, and is the singer singing a minor third and over a major chord, or you know I'm not hearing that. I'll hear it if it sounds funky in my ear, but I just always listen to music like anybody else does, like a fan.
So we have some kind words sent in from Trevor Finley, the super talented
Oh wow.
singer-songwriter and
Oh,
guitarist. And Trevor says, it doesn't just take talent and ability to step into a gig like April Wine. It also takes strength and fortitude. Marc was tasked with carrying the torch forward for one of Canada's most iconic, beloved, and renowned bands. And he does so with class and ease. It's easy to see that he respects the music and the fans, and he seems to be having a whole lot of fun doing it. I know it's social media, but you can't fake a smile like that. They're big shoes to fill, and Marc wears them with comfort. Congrats, my friend. Continued success. That's from Trevor Finley.
wow. Well, thank you, Trevor. I love your I love your Facebook posts when you imitate the fans. You're so talented, dude. I love it. You're funny. Oh man. Um, hey man, can you play that Led Zeppelin too? Yeah. Anyways, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Trevor's it's hilarious. Anyways, yeah, thank you. That's much appreciated. I am a fan. I keep that respect. I think when you've been a musician and you've paid your dues and done a lot of bad gigs and got hungry a lot, you never take anything for granted. You never feel like you're owed anything. It was, I was in 8 seconds. I thought I was 22 years old. I thought that's what you did. You practiced guitar and you became a rock star. I had no clue. No clue. I actually thought I deserved to be there, you know, and I didn't really, because I hadn't paid my dues, and when they gave me the boot, it was the best thing that could have happened to me, because I had to move to Montreal, go to school, do a bachelor's degree in music, and then start Wang Dang Doodle and get a club gig that paid $50, and you had to play till 3 in the morning. And when you're walking off stage, you get shit from this guy who just walked in because he's pissed off because you stopped playing and you've been there since 10. All kinds of stuff, waitresses dropping booze on your gear, and stuff like all the dues that I paid over the years. I had never done that before. So that's where you learn. That's the school of being a musician. I have a bachelor's degree in music, man. never really use it, right? The Bistrot à Jojo on Saint Denis Street was my school, and it still is. I play there once a month. I love to go play there and just play spontaneous improvised music with other musicians listening to each other. That's the real deal.
Do you think having Miles having handpicked you and giving you his blessing helped to have the existing April Wine fans accept you as the new front man?
I hope so. I hope so. Miles liked what he heard. Miles was confident that I could carry the torch, you know. Miles wanted his songs to carry on. He wanted April Wine to carry on. He wanted people to have a good time when they came to an April Wine concert, you know. April Wine's a rock and roll band. It's a rock and roll party band. We talk about drinking and making out with girls and cars and love songs, and it's not brain surgery, right? It's a rock and roll good time band. And I think Miles liked my attitude. He liked that I smiled a lot. He liked that I was a happy person, you know, and I didn't. I try not to judge people. I didn't have any. Don't have an ego. Try not to keep that in check. Having two young daughters will do that to you, which is really good. you know, and I hope the fans trusted Miles' intuition. You know, and a lot of them, there's a lot of naysayers out there that not just for April Wine, they'll say with it for any band that they won't accept an original member. And, there's some merit to that. I understand. I understand we idolize these people. We grow up listening to this music. They become our idols. They become so important to us. I had Ace Frehley posters all over my wall, but we grow old and we can't keep doing what we're doing. And Miles, rock and roll is a vicious game. It was vicious for Miles. He led quite the lifestyle. He was a diabetic, and he was hard on his health, like a lot of rockers of that era were, and he couldn't do it anymore. But he knew he had good songs, and he wanted those songs to live on. So I just hope I'm doing the best I can for the fans who come listen to these songs. That's my job. Honor Miles, and honor the other members of April Wine is too, because we talk about Miles a lot, but April Wine, I mean, the songs were the stars, right? But those musicians were killer. Everybody goes, oh, April Wine was my first show I ever saw at the Forum in 72 or whatever. Everybody was blown away by April Wine's show. Everybody that talks to me and tells me that April Wine was one of the first bands they saw, they remember it like it was yesterday. It's like seeing Zeppelin, right? Because it was grandiose. It was amazing. And so we need to remember that, they were a powerhouse.
We have a fan question from Jennifer Tate, who appreciates what you've brought to the band. She says, Marc, I want to thank you because by stepping in as April Wine's frontman, you've let someone like me, who didn't grow up in the band's original era, finally experience their music the way it was meant to be heard, live. How does it feel to know that your passion for music is giving a whole new generation a chance to be a part of April Wine's story? Also, since joining the band, what has been the most rewarding part of carrying that legacy forward? So how does it feel to be bringing this to a whole new generation, and what's been the most rewarding part?
It feels absolutely fantastic. We're seeing younger and younger people at our shows. We played with Def Leppard in Quebec City, and there was like a bunch of kids in the front rows, and they're like singing the songs. That's good parenting right there. They're listening to their parents' records. And I think it's fantastic. It feels great to be able to do that. I'm a musician. I serve songs, right? That's what I do. And it feels great to be able to do that. And what was the second part of her question again?
What is the most rewarding part?
Okay. Most rewarding part, I've said this before, but I'll say it again. We're playing, we start just between you and me. I start singing it. There's a couple in the front row. Gentleman turns to his girlfriend or wife or whatever, and he's singing to her, just between you and me. He sings, he's, singing, and then he turns to me and he's singing to me the lyrics, right? And I'm watching this and I'm looking at her while he's singing to me, and she's falling in love with him all over again. You know, that's so rewarding to be able to be part of that couple right there. What was that song in their lifetime? Did they get married to that song? Did they have their first kiss to that song? You know, it's so rewarding to see that, the power of music and what it does to people's lives. People want to escape now. We live in a really tough world, you know. The world kind of sucks right now. You know, please keep coming to listen to live musicians, and keep coming to hear these bands. You know, you'll feel good. You'll have a good evening and a good time. You know, that's what's most rewarding, seeing people react to these songs. We had a gentleman say, could you stretch out just between you and me a little longer? I want to propose to my girlfriend. This is on the BTO tour. And we go, okay, we'll double the solo. We'll double the guitar solo. So when you hear the guitar solo, that's your cue. Get down on one knee, right? And we had the lighting guy. We knew where they were sitting. Guitar solo comes up, solo spotlight on the guy. The guy's on one knees proposing. The crowd's like going, like, what's going on? And putting him up on the screen, and everybody's seeing that he's proposing to them, to his girlfriend. And I'm playing guitar and watching this live. So cool. You know, yeah, it's a wonderful job.
We have 3 fans that have the same question. So I'm going to blast through all 3 because one person asked it very creatively, which I found entertaining. So Joe Massey asks, is the band going to write and record new music? Then Alistair Matheson very uniquely says, I'm thirsty for new wine. Is there any fermenting in the studio? And then Philip Johnson asks, is April Wine going to produce and release any new music? They're my favorite all-time band. I've seen them live during the Nature of the Beast and Power Play tours in the early 80s, and recently in Regina with the Headpins and BTO. So all 3 are just asking, is there any plans for new music?
There's a new song that's been recorded, and a live album from Miles's last performance that was recorded. So the plan originally was to put out this live album with this new song on it. And I don't know where we're at with that right now. That's April Wine Entertainment Inc. that takes care of that. But there is material out there. I know that, you know, Miles was a writer, right? Writers write all the time. So there are a bunch of audio snippets in his iPhone somewhere that could potentially be turned into songs. That's something that we'll have to look into. Because I think that it would be great if we could, you know, take one of Miles's ideas and turn it into a song. That would be really cool. We just have to take the time to do that. And we've been super busy playing. So, and also we don't want to put anything out there until everybody is settled. I mean, everybody is in agreement that the product should go out. So we're kind of in limbo right now as far as new material goes. But yeah, it would be really fun to do. Absolutely.
We have a question from Ed Landriot. His question is, what is the best and worst parts of fronting one of the most iconic Canadian rock bands ever? So you've talked about the best parts a lot, but best and worst parts. It's the fart tube is the worst, isn't it?
You know, a bunch of guys together. It's no big deal. It's like a baseball team or a hockey team. The worst part, I think, is people criticizing the sound of the band, or criticizing the fact that they even say that Brian Greenway is not an original member and he's been there for 47 years. I mean, how do you qualify? You know, Miles, for all of the internet naysayers, Miles Goodwin wasn't an original member of April Wine. You know, I mean, they started in '69 and Miles came in, and so he was not even an original. It was the Henman brothers, you know, who started the band, and they knew Miles, but he wasn't in the band right away. And so that's kind of tiring to hear, I don't I don't let it get to me anymore with those negative comments because there are a lot more positive comments from people who actually come see the show. Um, so that would be the internet guys that's just complain because they can behind an anonymous keyboard, you know. Um, the rest is all good, besides the sore back because I can't stand up in a tour bus and not knowing where to have a cup of coffee in Germany. Besides that,
You need like a sunroof so you can just kind of have your head out the top, right?
like Fred Flintstone, yeah,
Yeah.
boink.
So you guys just wrapped up a European tour with Uriah Heep. Man, the shows looked incredible. I was following on social media, the pictures, the videos. It looked like big crowds, enthusiastic crowds. Everything looked and sounded great. What was the tour like and what was the reception? It looked like it couldn't have gone any better.
Well, we were opening up for Uriah Heep, so the crowd that was there was for Uriah Heep and Heavy Petting, which were a Scottish band. They were before us. There were some people there for April Wine, but let's be honest here. April Wine hadn't been in Europe for 43 years or whatever since the 80s, right? So we had some people were like, "We saw you in 83. Where the hell have you been?" Miles didn't want to travel. Miles didn't want to do that kind of stuff, so they didn't. So they lost a big part of that market, right? Um, the crowds were there, and we had to win them over. They were like, April Wine, why does that name ring a bell? And oh, that song, I know that song. That's them. Oh, and that song is them. So, and we had amazing response. People loved us. It was like, but we were like an opening act that nobody knew almost because we had to win them over.
Were you looking forward to that challenge, knowing this isn't a crowd that's
Absolutely.
all here to see us?
Absolutely. It was great. And the guys in Uriah Heep could not be nicer. The whole tour, the cruise, it was just fantastic. Funny and brilliant musicians, and fun to work with. And yeah, we did I'm really proud of the band. We did a good job, not under not always easy circumstances. We did a good job, and I think we won over a lot of fans in Europe. But yeah, it looked great. We have an amazing photographer in Taylor, and the crowd's reactions were honest. They weren't, photoshopped. So the crowds really enjoyed April Wine, and I think we did a good job of opening up for Uriah Heep. And you know, maybe we'll go back and under our own tour. Who knows? You
Headline,
know?
baby.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think we could do as big a rooms. We could probably do clubs and stuff, but it's people know the band. They remember us now, from this tour.
One way that I know that April Wine is known as an incredible live band is because I have 7 questions now from fans that are all to do with the live show for the band. So I put them all together. And if you're cool with it, we'll just rapid fire through all 7 because I want to give these fans a moment in the spotlight for providing a question. So 7 live questions. Here we go. Dan Collins asks, how does your European tour with April Wine compare to your early experiences with 8 Seconds?
Well, it was similar because we had to win over crowds with 8 seconds as well, because we were an opener for Wang Chung. So very similar, but I felt a lot more comfortable. I know a bit more what I'm doing now compared to 1985.
Taylor Jones asks, what was his favorite moment from their most recent European tour?
Oh my God, every show was amazing. Every show was great. I think the last show was really a kicker. The crowd was really, really into that picture you see the whole crowd, and they were standing up and screaming, and it was just wonderful. They're not like in North American crowds. They'll listen a bit more politely at first, but then when they respond, yeah, well, no, they respond like animals, but they don't scream and shout during the song. They listen.
Hmm.
And I hardly saw any iPhones out there, which was wonderful. Europeans listen with their ears, not filming through an iPhone.
Kevin Gilfillan, okay, definitely butchered his name. What are the most challenging April Wine songs to perform live? So you mentioned some guitar riffs are tough. I don't know any other answers for that.
Yeah, some certain guitar riffs, I if I don't warm up before, I might get pinched, during the show. So I always have a guitar to warm up before, anyways. Yeah, but right now, it's really I'm comfortable in saying that I've got them down now, where I think I'm making them my own.
What's great is once you just know the songs inside and out, you don't have to think about it. You can then focus on the moment and interactions and enjoying things. And yeah.
I think that's what I've been doing for about 2 years now. The first year was the wheels were spinning, but now that my muscle memory is there, and I practice, I still, if we've got a gig coming up, I'm still doing the show from head to toe, once or twice a week at my place, just to keep the muscle memory fresh.
Kevin Lorne Mitchell asks, pro athletes go through times where they are worn out from travel and stress. They have nights off. Does this go for musicians as well?
Oh man, we love our nights off on tour, where we have a hotel room with a decent shower and a bed that's not moving around. We love it. Yes, absolutely. Because it's Groundhog Day on a tour. I've literally made the typical Spinal Tap, mistakes, where I would say hello Cleveland and we're in Detroit or whatever. It's like, even though it's written on my set list, you travel, you go to a different city, you go to the hotel, you go to the gig, you do sound check, you eat, you do the gig. It's like it's a cycle, and it's those things in Spinal Tap. They hit home because they're real. I've gotten lost from the dressing room to the gig. It's happened.
Just in the curtains, just doesn't know.
It's happened. Could have sworn the stage was this way.
So the main reason why bands can't play every single night, if you're on a 2-month tour, it's not 2 months straight of every day playing. It's normally for the vocalists. The vocals need a break at some point. Do you have a standard schedule where it's 3 nights on, one off, or 2 nights on, one off, or 4 nights and one off? Is there something works best for your voice?
This last tour, we actually had a 5-nighter in a row, and my voice held up.
Okay.
My voice held out great. My voice was getting stronger on tour. So it's a muscle, right? And because I was using it more, I felt like I was getting stronger and stronger. You just have to stay healthy. I know my body. If I sing when I'm sick, I'm screwed. I will hurt my voice and I'll be out for like a week or two. So I have to stay healthy, not get sick. I was sick on the BTO tour for one night. And there was that one night, I forget where it was, but I wasn't jumping off drum risers and I wasn't dancing around. I was just like focusing on singing in tune and in time because I was sick. But besides that, I mean, I've been lucky, touch wood. My voice got actually stronger during this tour, but I shut up a lot. If I know there's a 5-nighter, I'm not going to be screaming at a Blue Jays game. I'll be silently cheering.
I just saw Sarah McLachlan here, and at the show that I saw, right off the bat, when she started, she said, "Okay, guys, I have a terrible cold. I just got shot up with steroids or something. So I'll do my best, but just, sing loud with me, be supportive, all that stuff." And she was absolutely incredible. If she didn't say anything, you wouldn't have known she was sick. But her singing through that Ottawa show, the next day she canceled Montreal. The day after that, she canceled Quebec City, just to show if you actually sing while you're sick, maybe you can get through it that night, but you are screwed moving forward.
Yep. That's so true. And yep. You don't talk during the day, but if you're sick, man, you're like, it's a fine line, So you see, she kept the Ottawa show, not to disappoint anybody, but then she had to blow out 2 other shows because of that. It's tough. You got to it's tough staying healthy.
It's tough out there for the singers. So we have 3 more questions about the live show. Rich Wyckoff asks, any chance of playing some deep cuts live that Miles would never consider?
Oh, well, we've got a few surprises coming up. We're going to be doing 50th anniversary album tours. So if you know your history, you know that there's a couple of albums or there's an album specifically in 2027 that's going to be 50 years old. So we're planning on doing it from start to finish. So there's going to be deep tracks that are going to be added to the set because we will be playing. The plan so far, don't quote me, it might change, but it would be to play the album from start to finish for one set, and then for the next set, play the other hits that everybody are used to hearing. So that's in the pipeline. I'm looking forward to that. That means learning new April Wine songs. Very excited about that.
Steve Gilbert asks, how much fun are you having?
Look at this smile. I'm having tons of fun. It's hard work, but it's work that I'm used to doing. And I'm so, appreciative, and it's an honor to be able to be in this position. I mean, this band is historical, and it's touched this band. These songs have touched so many people. It's truly an honor to sing them, and to bring my spin on them. To say that I'm a member of April Wine, of all musicians, the amazing musicians that have been in this band, I can add my name to that, and it's a real honor.
So the final live question is from Gerald Hartley. You've answered this one a little bit, but he asks, ask him about how he went about reworking the songs for live performances so that they're closer to the original album versions. I believe he did make an effort to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the band, when you're used to playing these songs for as long as April Wine have been playing them, they kind of morphed, and the guys would do them in a certain way. And then I come in at rehearsal and I could just say, well, that's not the right chord. That's not the right riff. And they're going, what do you mean that's not the right chord? I've been doing this song.
We're April Wine. This is the
April. Who the hell are you to tell it? And it was like, but I didn't do it with any kind of attitude. I just kind of go, hey guys, I mean, I've been listening to these tunes, for all year or whatever. And then they would go back and listen to them and go, holy cow, you're right. We did. They have morphed into something else over the years, which is cool. It's only natural, I think, for bands to start jamming in a section of a song and taking it somewhere else, because we're musicians. That's what we do. So to answer the question, yeah, the guys were very open-minded, and we decided, we're going to play it like the record. So I came in and said just a few suggestions here and there. Might want to play that chord there because that's like the record, and that riff is kind of more like the record than what you're playing now, which is cool, but it's not like what people are, used to hearing. So, and I think that's Miles. I think Miles is, I think he got maybe a little bored of playing them after all these years. So he took them somewhere else, which is normal. You listen to guys, Steely Dan, don't expect Steely Dan to play their tunes like you hear them on the record anymore. They've morphed into other things. So yeah, to answer the question, yeah, I wanted to make sure that it was like the record and the guys were on board with it. That's the first thing we talked about when we started rehearsals. We're going to play these songs just like the record.
So since getting back from the European tour, you've already started a Canadian tour, and those Canadian shows continue into the first 3 months of 2026. If our listeners right now go and purchase a ticket to one of these upcoming shows, what can they expect from an April Wine concert?
Well, they're going to hear the hits. They're going to hear a band that's firing on all cylinders, that are happy to be there, that are having a good time on stage. And, Brian's like 74 years old, and get out of his way, man. He's like on stage the other day, he's like pushing me and pushing up against me and move over, you young kid, It's like, it's great. He's got a ton of energy. Roy Nickel on drums is dynamite. Richard on bass is a monster. So we're just, we're firing on all cylinders. We really enjoy playing these songs and seeing the fans' reaction to them. So you're going to get a good time. You're going to bring your dancing shoes,
I checked all the dates and all the cities. There's no Ottawa on there. So I'm just going to put it out there into the ether, planting the seed of possibly manifesting an Ottawa date out of nowhere, out of thin air. It can be later in the year. I'm just saying, Just store
Especially in the
that
new
back here somewhere.
especially in your new venue, right? The Hard Rock, that casino, what's it called?
Yeah, Hard Rock Live Casino. So what's great about that venue is it's 1,800 people. So it's a great size. But when you go in, and even though it's big enough to attract world-class touring bands, it feels pretty intimate when you're in there. So I was just there for the band Walk Off the Earth. And it looked great. It sounded great. There's lots of free parking. Like it's awesome, and it's bringing out Avril Lavigne just played there, and all these huge artists are coming out. So maybe you guys want to talk to the Hard Rock. I don't know.
Well, well, it was mentioned like months ago when the Quebec and Quebec City and Montreal dates were put together. So probably it's just a question of having the dates available. Maybe the Ottawa venue wasn't available when we were, but I mean, we're definitely going to come play Ottawa. Absolutely. I mean, I'll fill the place with my cousins.
Yeah. Yeah. So many cousins. I have a random thing before we wrap up is my parents are actually huge April Wine fans, and they saw April Wine in 2012 in Russell. So I grew up in Russell, Ontario, about 30 minutes outside of Ottawa. And what's funny is the Russell Fair every year has huge bands come out and play, and everyone's like, how can you get a big band out to this town that only had 3,000 people at the time? But there's 3,000 population, but 2,000 people would come out from Russell to that show. So they saw April Wine in 2012 and absolutely loved it. They told me
Yeah,
that, and I thought I would throw that in because I thought that was awesome.
that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, definitely love to go out and play small towns, and we're definitely going to do that. We really enjoy playing live, and the band is sounding better than ever. So aprilwine.ca, look us up, come say hi.
So I have one final quote, and this is from the front man, the singer and guitarist from a platinum band that I love. This is from Colin McDonald of the Trues. And even though he doesn't know you personally, when he saw that I was having a member of April Wine on, he wanted to let me know that I love April Wine, and I've always had a lot of respect for that band. I think they have lots of great songs, and I'm a big fan of the song Say Hello. So that's from Colin McDonald of the Trues.
Wow. Thanks, Colin. Hopefully we'll see each other down the road. Yeah, thank you.
As we wrap up here, you've had a lengthy career in the music industry. How do you keep this fun? And what's your secret to longevity?
I think most musicians look younger than they are because I think that most musicians get rid of their stress while playing music. so so we end up like maybe not being as stressed out human beings, because we get to rock out on a guitar, we get to sing and scream, and we get to let a lot of frustrations out on stage in front of people. So for me, I mean, I think that's the secret. I just really enjoy playing, and I get energized by playing. Well, I don't go to bed after an April Wine gig. I'm ready to do another one. I'm the adrenaline's pumping, and I'm excited. So I think that's a blessing to be able to do what I love to do, and it gives me that wonderful energy.
We've made it to the final three questions. Can you handle three more questions before we wrap up?
Absolutely.
So when you look back on your life and career, what are you most proud of?
I think that I didn't quit. You know, that music let me down many, many times, but I didn't quit because I just love doing it. And finally it's like, well, now I get to do it on a higher level, and it's such a thrill. I'll never take it for granted. I'll always be in awe of getting up there and playing just like a fan.
And now when you look back on your life and career, what are you most grateful for?
My daughters. Honestly, I mean, music is not brain surgery. We're not saving lives. It's an entertainment business, and there's a million guys out there, who could sing and play guitar, and I'm lucky and blessed to be able to do it at the level that I'm doing it. just know that I'm not taking it for granted, and that it's truly an honor for me to do it. And thank you for coming out and seeing us live.
If you could sit down next to your 10-year-old self and you could whisper words of advice. So if you took all the lessons you've learned from 10 years old to where you are today, and you took the mentorship and the lessons and the experiences, the highs and lows, the successes and failures, and you whispered advice in cute little Marc's ear sitting there to guide him through this human experience, what do you say to him?
I actually had to do that once in a therapy. It's a wonderful exercise to do. I would just say, you know what? Believe in yourself. Follow your heart, follow your instinct, and listen to your body, not your brain. And if it feels good, do it. If it doesn't feel good, don't do it. And work hard.
As we wrap up, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you for your lifelong pursuit of mastery as a guitarist and as a singer-songwriter. I want to commend you for having the courage to pursue your dream and to follow it through to fruition. I want to thank you for putting out great music that's become the soundtrack to the lives of people from around the world. I want to thank you for keeping the April wine train rolling so that the next generation gets to experience this incredible band live. And we heard perhaps there's some new music on the way as well. And then last but not least, I want to thank you for sitting down with me for the last 2 hours for this interview. You answered all my crazy April wine questions. So Marc, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Joel. You're doing a great job. Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. And we'll see you soon in Ottawa.
Absolutely. There you go. It's documented. So thank you for the kind words. You're very welcome. And to the Marc Parent fans, to the April Wine fans, to the podcast fans, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you, Joel. Take care.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Who would you like me to feature next for a 2-hour deep dive interview? You can let me know in the comments. You can also send me an email at joelmartinmastery@gmail.com, or you can reach out to me on all social media platforms at joelmartinmastery. So I am done. I am complete. I approve this message, and I'll see you on the next episode.